They say monsters aren't born, they're made. But whoever said that never met Edward Teach. Somewhere around the late 1600s, no one's exactly sure when, the sea coughed up a storm, the sky growled with thunder, and in the soggy port town of Bristol, England, a woman screamed into the night. And out came a child with smoke in his lungs and fury in his soul. Was he born crying? No. He growled. According to absolutely no historical record, but let's go with it, his first breath made the candlelight flicker, and the midwife crossed herself twice. They named him Edward. A nice, normal name for a boy who would one day blockade cities, drink gunpowder rum, and braid burning matches into his beard for fun. It was a humble beginning, dirty streets, fish guts in the harbor, sailors vomiting into barrels, you know, a perfect place to raise a nightmare. As he grew, they say his eyes didn't blink. His shadow sometimes moved on its own. And by the time he was 10, the local priest whispered to his apprentice, "That boy will not die in peace." And he didn't. But that's another story. This is the origin of dread. This is how Edward Teach stepped into the world. Not as a man, but as a rum-soaked prophecy wrapped in baby fat. No one remembers the exact date. No holy men recorded it. There was no prophecy. No omen. No flickering star. Just a screaming wind, a black sky, and the wailing of a mother in Bristol, England, her cries carried off into a port city that stank of rum, fish guts, and men who hadn't prayed in years. That's how the world welcomed Edward Teach. The boy who would one day be known as Blackbeard didn't enter life. He punched his way through it. And from the very first breath, it seemed the world around him understood. This child would not be a man. He would be a problem. Bristol, in the late 1600s, wasn't some cozy town with cobbled streets and friendly bakers. It was a festering artery of the British Empire, a harbor pulsing with smugglers, drunks, beggars, liars, and men with knives who smiled when they spoke. Edward grew up surrounded by salt-crusted criminals, barefoot thieves, and sailors who wore tattoos like war medals and smelled of blood and gunpowder. These were not the bedtime storytellers of polite society. These were men who'd buried treasure in graves they'd dug themselves. Who had seen men keel-hauled, disemboweled, and fed to the sea. And they spoke freely, loudly, after 3 mugs of warm ale and a few coins tossed on a splintered table. Edward listened. Always listening. Hiding behind ale barrels, under tables, in the shadows of the docks. He soaked up their words like they were scripture, and those scriptures taught him the truth of the world. Nobody gives you fear. You take it. While other boys played with wooden swords, Edward learned how to sharpen real ones. While they skipped stones across calm waters, Edward stared out into the sea and imagined burning sails, screaming men, and his name written in cannon smoke. He didn't laugh much. Didn't cry either. He just watched. And waited. Sailors would pass him by and say, "That boy's got the devil watching over him." But they were wrong. The devil wasn't watching. He was waiting. And Edward Teach, the boy of fish guts and firelight, was going to meet him on the waves. And Edward Teach, the boy of fish guts and firelight, was going to meet the devil on the waves. But the devil wasn't the only teacher. By the time Edward could walk without stumbling, he was walking through broken teeth and spilled ale, navigating the taverns of Bristol like a rat through a butcher's stall. He saw more black eyes than schoolbooks, more knives than toys, and heard more curses than lullabies. He watched men beat each other bloody over stolen coins, spitting out molars like sunflower seeds while the barkeep kept pouring. No one stopped the fights. Hell, half the time, the crowd cheered. In Edward's world, violence wasn't shocking. It was custom. Outside the taverns, the harbor was worse. He saw what fear looked like after the heartbeat stopped. He saw what happened to the unprepared. And then there were the ships. Merchant ships docked with splintered masts, sails torn to ribbons, and blood dripping down the gangplank like candle wax. The survivors staggered off half-dead, eyes wild, babbling about Caribbean waters, pirate flags, and screams in the night. Sometimes they carried chests. By the time most boys were picking apprenticeships, Edward was already picking targets. He didn't run away. He vanished, the kind of vanishing that leaves no note, no goodbye, not even a footprint in the mud. One day he was there, sharpening his knife by the docks. The next, just gone. Some said they saw him walk onto a privateer ship before dawn, not a word to anyone. Others claimed he just melted into the mist like a ghost returning to sea. Whatever the truth, one thing stuck. That was the day Edward Teach stopped being a boy. And the sea began building something far worse in his place. The ship flew the British flag, but let's not romanticize it. It wasn't about queen or country. It was state-sanctioned piracy during the War of Spanish Succession. Loot, burn, kill, so long as it was a Spanish flag you pissed on. Edward was perfect for it. No hesitation. No fear. Just cold, mechanical learning. He soaked up violence like salt into skin. He learned how a man sounds when he's stabbed below the ribs. How to load a musket in wind and rain. How to board a ship on fire and come out laughing. He didn't talk much. But when he did, even the older crew listened. There was something wrong behind his eyes. Something calm in all the killing. He wasn't serving a flag. He was studying. And the sea, brutal and endless, became his classroom.